The island continent of Australia is surrounded by the vast waters of the Pacific and Indian Oceans. And early explorers charted parts of the rugged coastline long before Captain Cook claimed it for the British Empire. In 1616, one of these intrepid adventurers, 35-year-old Dutch mariner Dirk Hartog, found himself off the harsh arid shores of what is now known as Dirk Hartog Island off Shark Bay. This is part of the state of Western Australia, and after being blown off course on the way to Batavia, present-day Jakarta, Hartog climbed these hard rocky cliffs and placed a pewter plate to record his landing in the future and forever to be named Cape Inscription. With the wind ominously picking up, I set out to retrace Dirk Hartog's early voyage by travelling along the West Australian coastline. But unlike Mr. Hartog's slow wooden trading ship, Draft, I have the advantage of 21st century technology aboard True North, a luxury dive boat with an onboard helicopter. I'll explore the known and hidden treats of this massive coastline, like the wonderful wild dolphins of Monkey Mire, miles and miles of pristine beaches, and some stunning diving with giant rays and my favourite, whale shark. What never changes though is the unpredictable weather, and with a big storm brewing, it could be 1616 again.
We're sitting outside a little town called Denham, and Cyclone Steve started in Cairns on the east coast of Australia just over a week ago. It's crossed right across Australia and headed for the western coast. We've already had to pull up the anchor because the anchor just won't hold us where we are, and we're right now drifting in open sea.
Just chasing your weather skids for the strong wind warnings for our coast here.
We have satellite positioning and charts, weather radar and updates, and we know what to expect. Skipper Dirk Hartog had only his eyes and experience to weather storms like this. Time to literally batten down the hatches.
Cyclone Steve is coming, it's ferocious.
We survived a rough night, and I can now really appreciate that nature is the ruler of these seas. But in 1629, it wasn't a cyclone that caused another Dutch merchant ship to sink. The Batavia was a 160-foot cargo ship, travelling along the famous Spice Trail with 7 other ships from the Netherlands. However, she separated from her companion vessels, veered far from her intended course, and was thousands of kilometres from her destination. And on board, a mutiny was brewing. The Batavia was carrying treasure, including large amounts of silver. On June 4th, the Batavia became wrecked on a jagged reef in the Abrohlos Islands, 40 miles off the coast of Western Australia.
In 1629, after the Batavia was wrecked on nearby Morning Reef, the survivors made their way to this windswept coral cay. Little did they realise, for many of them, this would also become their graveyard.
Geronimus Cornelius, the most senior company man who fueled the mutiny, was amongst the survivors that made it to shore. The skipper took a longboat and men to find help. The rest were all marooned on barren land, known as Batavia's Graveyard, for over 3 harrowing months. The survivors possibly fed on animals like these sea lions that still frequent the islands today.
Swarming with birds, and I guess these birds may have provided some food source for the survivors.
After 3 months here, Cornelius seemed to have lost his mind. In a horrific display of human savagery, he and his mutineers brutally raped the women, then mercilessly slaughtered around 120 of the Batavia's surviving passengers. A rescue ship finally arrived, and Cornelius and the mutineers were trialled, tortured and hung.
The nightmares that these poor people must have endured are terrible. This has got to be one of the saddest places I've ever been to.
Dive Master Hugh Edwards dedicated 3 years of his life to locating the ship. In 1963, nearly 400 years after the Batavia had struck the reef, his search was successful. It was a groundbreaking discovery. The Batavia's hull was spotted under Morning Reef's crystal clear waters. She had lain undisturbed for centuries. The Batavia was a large, well-armed vessel, and even after 371 years underwater, there was still a number of cannons intact. The story of the Batavia now lives in the Western Australian Museum, but its final resting place beneath these waters is swallowing what little remains of the wreck. These timbers are all that's left of the hull of the Batavia. In 1628, 300 people boarded this vessel in search of a new life in Batavia. What they didn't know was their voyage would end in tragedy. Next up, all this paradise and only me to enjoy it, and the marvellous Monkey Mia dolphins. After diving back into history on one of Australia's most gruesome wreck stories, it's now time to interact once again with our amazing marine life. Shark Bay lies on Australia's west coast and is a World Heritage Area. Even though it has a foreboding name, this is an area of beautiful beaches and home to Western Australia's most famous friendly wild dolphins of Monkey Mia. Over the last few decades, Monkey Mia Beach has become famous for the dolphins that actually visit the shores of the Monkey Mia Beach. The dolphins are territorial, so they can travel within a 70 to 80 kilometre radius, but they choose to come into this little area and interact with people. It all started with a few fishermen feeding the dolphins fish from their nets and then hand feeding them on the beach.
People certainly like to see the feeding because it's something that has gone on for many years, but the dolphins don't need it. The dolphin can eat up to 6 to 8, maybe even 10 to 12 kilos a day, and the 2 kilos they get here is what we call a tidbit. It's a third of their diet, and the reason we brought that in is so that they don't come dependent here and they don't lose their ability to hunt and look after themselves.
Here they can come and go as they please, and only a few ever come in to feed. Out of a localised population of about 600, only 7 dolphins are known as beach dolphins, and all of them are females. But as you can see by these bite marks, young dolphins are vulnerable in a place that lives up to its name of Shark Bay. This wound will more than likely heal, but many young dolphins here bear scars from attacks. Tiger sharks are common in these areas, targeting turtles, young dolphins, and the odd dugong. These dolphins are not afraid of shallow water. In fact, they use the shallow banks to trap fish, a kind of barrier feeding. Like us, dolphins are social and will often work together to catch a feed. That is if the free feed on the beach is not in full swing. Dolphins are not the only animals you can get up close to. I found a pelican who was only too happy to be in my presence. Though he dozed off in my company, which some people might think is rude, I think beach, sun, belly full of fish, I think I'd have a quick kip too. It was time to follow the dolphins out to their feeding grounds and take a look below the surface of Shark Bay.
This is Steam Point here, which is actually the most westerly point of Western Australia.
We dived a site called Monkey Rock Cave. I wonder if I'll see any sea monkeys. Maybe not, but these southern waters are full of marine life. They might not be gin clear like the tropics, but the extra nutrients attract all kinds of fish species, and this cave was no exception. The dolphins have plenty to eat down here. It was time to head north and enjoy the sights of the remote and stunning WA coastline.
Kids' favourite.
We dropped anchor at Ningaloo Bay. This is extremely remote and often you won't see a soul. However, our arrival attracted the only people from miles around, and we tried our luck to hitch a ride.
One in the back and we'll stack all your gear in there.
Bingo! Out here, people are often friendly, and Mike and his family were happy to show us around.
Lift it up. Oh, okay.
There is one unique thing about this coastline. It seems consistently dry and dusty, a rugged contrast to the sparkling ocean that laps at its thirsty shores. Walking around Ningaloo Station at the moment, it's a little bit like walking around a ghost town. It's full of these half-finished huts. But this is what I love, the unexpected. No pre-arranged schedule, just winging it. And it was just us and the land, and the only thing within Kui were the sheep.
This is the closest they get to nature.
Coming up to 3 Mile Camp, and probably one of the best surfing spots around here. It's also the start to the Ningaloo Reef. Coral beds are right out the front here. This remote campsite is miles from anywhere. The place was evacuated of people because of the cyclone. I literally had paradise all to myself. Despite being so remote, surfers from all around the world come to surf the famous breaks that roll into these shores. In fact, it's so inviting. I'm going for a swim. See ya! So here I am, a lone swimmer on the start of the Ningaloo Reef. Well, I'm under the watchful eye of the local lifeguard, who has a bird's eye view, or at least a sea eagle's eye view anyway. Next on Roar of the Wild, the rugged beauty of both the land and the ocean. I'm on the eastern side of the spectacular Cape Range. Check this out. Behind me is the Exmouth Gulf, which runs parallel to this range all the way up to the tip of the Northwest Cape. 10 million years ago, the northwest corner of Australia was covered by a warm, shallow sea. Later, the crust of the Earth crumpled and a huge upward fold in the rock layers, or anticline, rose to form the Cape Range Peninsula. The backbone of the range is hard fossil-bearing limestone. The Cape Range started forming about 15 million years ago, when this was actually a coral reef. Centuries of erosion have formed spectacular gorges like this one at Yardie Creek. The range is carved by ancient rivers and forms the spine of the peninsula that stretches up towards Northwest Cape. The present-day coastal plain is built of marine sediments deposited about 40,000 years ago, during the last of the sea level periods. The fossil species present on the plain are much the same as the living species on the modern reef, but very different from those on the range. Archaeological evidence shows that the Aborigines were here 30,000 years ago. That's a lot longer than when we knew that it existed. They probably lived on many of the marine and terrestrial species that we can find today. The importance of Cape Range in understanding the lives of coastal Aboriginal Australians cannot be overstated. The peninsula is unique in being the nearest point of the Australian continent to the edge of the continental shelf. To survive in such a harsh land, you must be well adapted to the environment. Early Aboriginals relied on the sea for their food, hunting fish, crabs, and collecting many shellfish. Other animals that would have contributed to their diet include the black-faced wallaby. These shy animals can be seen around Cape Range. Goannas were also a food source for Aboriginals, and this guy was not shy. Lucky for him, I wasn't looking for dinner. A common sight on the Australian landscape, massive termite mounds, often a cool retreat for many reptiles.
Anyone home?
At 300 kilometres, Ningaloo is the world's largest fringing reef, located along the coast of Western Australia. And if you look, you'll find its history scattered everywhere. This tooth right here is from a shark called Megalodon carcharodon, an ancestor to the great white shark, but it grew much bigger. Luckily, these giant predators today are extinct. And today's largest shark is a wow shark, a gentle giant, also found in these waters. Whales, dolphins, dugongs, manta rays, huge cod and sharks can be seen in abundance on the reef. It's the only large reef in the world found this close to a continental landmass, about 100 metres offshore at its nearest point. I couldn't wait to go below this sparkling ocean and see the diverse ecosystem for myself. Ningaloo supports a staggering 500 species of fish, 300 species of corals, 600 species of mollusks, and many other marine invertebrates. These include vulnerable marine creatures, including loggerhead, green, flatback, and hawksbill turtles that depend on the reef and coastal ecosystems for food, breeding, and nesting. Ningaloo is a special biogeographical zone where the distributions of tropical and temperate marine and terrestrial life, some of it unique to the area, overlap. Coming up, my dream dive with giant rays and the mighty whale shark.
Tandabidi is a pretty special place. Just out here is the Ningaloo Reef, and pretty soon the whale shark season will be in full swing. No one's seen a whale shark yet, but we're going to send the helicopter up in about half an hour. And you never know, we may just get the first whale shark of the season.
This is definitely the best way to spot these guys. Generally, here your average shark is about 8 metres, and they often swim near the surface. The whale shark can grow up to 18 metres in length. That means from up here, they should be quite easy to spot. And there it is, the world's largest species of shark. He doesn't look so big from up here. I was just dying to get in the water and swim with one.
What a ride. Can't beat the view from up there. It's the best way to look for whale sharks.
But there's something else that makes Ningaloo so special. In March and April, the reef spawns, and corals release their larvae into the water. These microscopic creatures in their millions attract the ocean giants, whales, manta rays, and whale sharks. The ocean is in my blood, and I love to spend time at sea. I've spent hours on the lookout for ocean giants.
We got dolphins, we're just going to try and get them in the dinghy.
Camera in hand, I'm ready to jump ship and start swimming. And there's my cue. Wingtips on the surface give away this group of manta rays. The manta ray is one of the 3 filter-feeding species of shark, but instead of teeth, it has a broad, flattened head, minute teeth, and mantles that extend to scoop up plankton. Manta rays grow up to a whopping 6 metres, from wingtip to wingtip, and when you're in the water with them, you realise how graceful they are. I love interacting with any animal. Manta rays, when socialising, go belly to belly and play and chase each other. I couldn't help but join in. Like many sea creatures, mantas love to be clean, and I had heard of a manta ray cleaning station. I was escorted to the cleaning site by a friendly turtle and, yes, a manta ray. Manta rays can weigh up to 1 tonne, and to have one perch on your head is an experience you will never forget. But to have 6 of them circling above you is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. They sit above coral heads, and dozens of tiny fish will eat algae and parasites from their massive bodies. Many people are familiar with the small cleaner wrasse, but here even a butterfly fish was getting in on the action. In Ningaloo, aggregations of up to 100 animals have been witnessed, suggesting it could be a mating ground. Lucky for us, these beautiful animals are fully protected at Ningaloo, and their ease with people is living proof that they don't have to fear us. I could have stayed forever, but I had another date. A date with the world's biggest fish. Ningaloo Reef is the only easily accessible place in the world where these giants appear in large numbers at predictable times of the year. I've swum with these sharks in a number of countries, but the magic never dims. I gathered my breath and dived below the surface. The massive body of a shark was now directly above me as I looked up at its silhouette. It was like a slow-moving bus. I held my breath while it passed over me, and then fin toward the surface behind the tail. The power for snorkeling comes from the legs, and you use the fins when chasing animals. When they're this big, you must use your head and a good boat driver who knows where to drop you. Stay calm and observe the animal from both the surface and underwater. There is nothing that can explain the feeling of a 9-metre giant heading directly for you. The adrenaline rushes right through your body. Whale sharks can weigh more than 11 tonnes. They're harmless filter feeders. Their massive gills trapping the plankton while extracting the water. Their small eyes sit near the front of their head, and they're identified by markings and dorsal fins. Although they can be seen on the surface, they're fairly mysterious and have eluded scientists. As they don't breathe air, they can easily move up and down in the water column. The white spots on their body, like manta rays, help with camouflage. As they dive down, they blend in so well with the reef or ocean. Whale sharks are vulnerable and, like many other species, are hunted in some countries. We don't know really how many whale sharks there are. Today, all our fish stocks and many marine species are disappearing. In a hungry world, careful management of our environment is essential, and that means all of us.
As the sun sets over the Ningaloo Reef, I bid farewell to the amazing marine life. But with me I take the incredible thoughts of swimming with a shark the size of a whale off the western coast of Australia.